Welcome, welcome. I'm your host, Brian Halley, and you're listening to the Brandstanding podcast. I'm excited to help you unlock the magic of brand strategy to supercharge your business in a way that's practical, easy, and fun. So let's dive in. Imagine your brand as a person. What kind of personality would they have? Are they adventurous, wise, playful? Today, we're exploring how defining your brand's personality can transform the way customers connect with you. Hello, my name is Brian Halley with the Brandstanding podcast, and with me, as always, the wonderful Emily.
Hi, everybody.
In previous podcasts, we have been discussing the 3 phases of branding, which is the message phase, the identity phase, and the expression phase. In the messaging phase, the first phase, there are 4 pillars, and we have gone over purpose, position, promise, and today we will be introducing the final pillar, what I think is the most exciting pillar, brand personality. Emily, why is brand personality so important?
Well, I think it's the same reason why it's important for a person to have a personality. If you didn't have a personality, you would be very boring.
True.
Brand personality is probably the easiest pillar to understand because we're so familiar with people having personalities. But I think, as we'll see, it's kind of also the trickiest one to pull off, especially when you're a new brand, like trying to figure out who you are is difficult to do. So, brand personality is just how it sounds. It's the human characteristics that you attribute to a brand. So, for example, these could be things like helpful. Is your brand helpful? Are you friendly? Is your brand sarcastic? Is your brand smart or is it creative? And these different personality traits help to shape perceptions about your brand with your potential customers, and it helps establish emotional connections with your customers as well.
So, Emily, why does that matter?
This is important because it helps you to position your brand in the market. So remember, if you've listened to the brand positioning episode, we talked about different strategies that you could use to make yourself different from the competition. And personality is one of those big strategies because even though you might be selling the same thing as a competitor, if you can use your brand personality to create a following with customers that like your personality or they resonate with you in some way, then that's going to help them be loyal to your brand instead of another brand. It also helps you to create consistency in the messaging that you use, your tone, and as well as the visuals. So all of the things that you're going to create in the next couple of phases, the identity phase and the expression phase, all those choices will be determined by the personality that you're trying to communicate to people. And I think you're going to talk about that a little bit later in today's episode.
Oh, yeah. Love this part. This is where it kind of makes the transition over into the identity and design.
Yeah, yeah. And like I mentioned before, even though this is one of the most important strategies, it's also one of the most overlooked. New brands often struggle getting to know their personality and they lack the consistency that they need to establish one. So, we're going to give you some shortcuts for that today here in a minute as well. First of all, though, let's compare 2 brands that are in the same industry that have 2 distinct personalities, just to give you a little bit of a flavor for what we're talking about. So, the brands that we're going to compare are Tesla and Ford.
Fun, fun.
Okay, so both in the car industry. And Brian and I did a bunch of research. We watched a bunch of their ads, we looked at their website, looked at their messaging, the design, their photography, all of the different elements that are going into what they're trying to communicate as a brand. And for Tesla, the things that we noted were that their personality was innovative. They were really trying to communicate the future, that their technology is cutting edge. They're also disruptive in the industry. They kind of take what's been done before and spin it or push.
It past its
Mhm.
boundaries. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Their look is very futuristic. It's visionary, bold, risk-taking. They're also eco-friendly and ethical. They're pushing high performance, minimalist style. They're ambitious and they're charismatic.
And I think if you know Tesla, you'd agree with all those.
Yeah,
That's what they are.
yeah. Do you wanna go over the Ford ones?
Yeah. Ford, been around a little longer, a lot longer. And what we saw when we were looking at all their imagery, their advertising, and their commercials over the years was dependable and trustworthy. They're very practical. They focus on hardworking, all American values is is one of the big ones. Durable and tough, innovative. They are innovative, yet they are traditional and family oriented, rugged and loyal and inclusive. Kind of brings everyone in,
Yeah, like
no matter what.
Ford is for everybody versus Tesla's kind of more of a, you gotta be in the club
Yeah,
type
ish.
of a following.
Yeah, that one Ford commercial we watched was talking about how even though we might live on different sides of the country, we are doing different activities, but at the heart, we are tough. We don't give up. We keep getting up every time we fall.
Yeah,
Good one.
yeah.
All right. So, over the past several episodes, we've been discussing strategies for helping your potential customers understand who your brand is and what it's all about. So, remember, you have like 3 to 7 seconds to communicate something to someone. Now, we're going to give you a brand personality shortcut that big brands use.
This is where you guys, like, picture the drum roll moment. Like, we've been working up to this for what how 6 episodes so that we could get to this.
I skip to this so fast when I'm talking to a client because it's so important and they get it really fast. And what this does, this strategy hijacks our brain's psychology, which makes it really powerful in brands. And we do this, ready? Drum roll.
Here we go.
We do this by using archetypes. You might have heard of them, English class. Archetypes, archetypal stories were first identified by Swiss psychologist Carl Jung. He noticed that certain patterns of human behavior popped up in stories from societies all over the world, separated from each other by distance and time. Like, for example, the wise old man archetype who often appears to help a hero on his or her journey.
Yeah, so this would be like Gandalf in Lord of the Rings.
Yoda in Star Wars.
Right. So Jung saw that the same wise old man showed up in stories from societies all over the place. They couldn't have built off of each other because they were so far apart or they were separated by hundreds of years. But that same archetype, that same character kept appearing anyway.
And it's like, wow, this is really cool stuff, Brian and Emily. But what does that have to do with brand? Well, Jung theorized that all humans shared in some kind of collective unconscious, which probably stems from evolutionary experiences that were common to all humans. For instance, all humans would be familiar with a mother or caregiver archetype because
Right.
there's been mothers
We all have
everywhere,
moms.
or people taking care of others, or even animals. So while human personalities are complex and can be difficult for an entity like a brand to develop, an archetype can offer a kind of universal jumping off point. It can provide a framework for brands to articulate their identity.
So archetypes, like Brian was just talking about, can be used as like a universal symbol or a persona that anybody, no matter where they are in the world, understands. They already understand what that character story is all about. So you don't have to spend a lot of time communicating who you are. Like, I have this sarcastic side, yet I also have this very caring side. You don't have to sit them down and have them get to know you like that, because you can shortcut the process by aligning your brand with one of these already understood personality arcs that you can use. It's almost like, remember in a previous episode, we talked about how we have these boxes in our brains and we want to put things in those boxes to sort them, to organize information. And this is one of those things, like, people already have a box for a mother or a caregiver archetype. They already have a box for a hero archetype because they're so familiar with that character. So if you can align yourself with one of those, then they can just put your brand right into one of those boxes.
And take a second and just imagine the power of that. Imagine you're a new brand and you're jumping into this and you want to like rise above the mass amounts of noise. What if you could put your brand into a story type that has existed since the world began?
Mhm. Yeah.
Psychologically,
This
across board. Like it's this is the secret. This is like the most exciting thing that we share with clients and we build on. And I'm so excited to have
yes.
this
Yeah,
episode.
it's awesome. So you can simplify a complex identity into a simple, relatable character. And you can build off of that over time, but at a basic level, people understand who you are very quickly. Some researchers even point to the rise of super brands like Coca-Cola and Nike in the 1980s and 1990s, that those companies accidentally or unintentionally stumbled into archetype territory. So Nike aligned themselves somehow with the story of the hero. So Nike is a hero archetype brand. They started telling themselves in this story of a hero, telling their customers that they were the hero if they wore their stuff. And that just launched their success massively. Coca-Cola similarly aligned themselves with the innocent archetype, and that became powerful storytelling because people got them. They understood
You got
who
that
they were.
intangible benefit they were getting, and they're like, "Where is this coming from? How are companies growing like this?"
And they started to become more valuable. Their brand became more valuable than their company was even worth. Usually you value a company based on revenue,
Assets, yeah.
assets, yeah. But these brands began to be more valuable than the actual
So
business.
it's fairly new.
Mhm.
So if you take your company and align it with these archetypes, not everybody's using them.
Right. This is how you
Right.
compete today.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So this is so vital. And here is why this is so powerful. Each one of these archetypes, and we're going to go over all of them here in a minute, but each archetype has a different goal. And when you align one of these archetypal goals with your brand, it creates a synergy that attracts customers that also have that goal. So it's like they're using your company, your brand, as a way for them to live out that story that that character is living. So they want to become the hero, or they want to become the caregiver, or they want to become the creator. And you're
Yeah.
offering them a way to live that story out through your brand. I'll just give you a second to let that sink in. It's so cool. So, building your brand around an archetypal story helps people understand who you are faster, and then it helps them remain loyal to you. And then this is also one of the big valuable things that's going to continue to come up in the next phases of design is that when you choose your brand archetype, that is going to direct your design choices when you go to design your logo, go to design your website, go to design all of the things that are going to be your visuals. It's going to direct the choices that you make in your brand voice, in the types of content you create, in the types of actions you decide to take when you're fulfilling your brand promise. And we're going to get into those in future episodes as well.
And you will be wondering in a little bit, once you learn this, you're going to wonder how you ever dealt with or organized or strategized without it,
Mhm.
I think.
Mhm.
So let's go over the 12 archetypes. There's 12 of
Yeah,
them.
let's tell them.
All 12. Here we go.
Okay, number 1.
All right, go.
The first one is the innocent. The innocent archetype is optimistic and pure. It longs for getting back to a time when things were perfect, when things were ideal, the good old days. An example of this brand is Coca-Cola.
Great. We'll keep it simple. Second is the sage. The sage is probably the wise old man.
Mhm.
This
Also could be a wise old woman.
Thank you, thank you. Wise. But the sage is seeking knowledge, looking for information
Mhm.
and wisdom. And an example of that is Google. Where do we go for our information?
Google.
Google.
Yeah, number 3, the explorer. The explorer is adventurous and free, searching for independence, living by their own ideals. And examples of this brand archetype are Jeep and Starbucks.
Okay. Getting a feel for this. The next one is the outlaw, rebellious and disruptive,
Do things their own way.
own way. Examples are Harley Davidson and Monster Energy drinks.
Okay. Number 5, the magician. The magician is about transformational change. They're visionary, they're cutting edge, magical. And brands that fall under this category are Axe
AX,
and
AXE.
and Disney.
Yeah. All right. The hero, being courageous and determined. Nike, Under Armour. There's so many examples, but we'll keep it just a couple right now.
Number 7, the lover. Lover brands are passionate, they're intimate, they're all about relationships. Examples of these brands are Haagen-Dazs and Victoria's Secret.
Number 8, the jester, fun and playful, probably a little bit comedic too.
Mhm.
Ben and Jerry's, Skittles, examples.
Number 9, the everyman. The everyman is relatable and approachable, the solid citizen, and the everyman brand examples are Wendy's and IKEA.
Number 10 is the caregiver, and that's compassionate and nurturing. And that's Dove and Marriott hotels,
Number
chains.
11, the ruler. The ruler is commanding and authoritative. They are all about creating a future that they envision. And these brands are Mercedes and Rolex.
Great. And the last, number 12, is the creator, imaginative and innovative. And those are Crayola and Lego. There we
There they
go.
are. There's the 12.
There's a 12. There's the magic done. No, there's so, oh my gosh. Wait until we get into these and you'll be like, what? Why haven't I been using these? All right. So why use these archetypes? So using the brand archetypes could build instant emotional resonance with your audience. In other words, it's getting your customers on the same frequency or energy of your values. You want them to say, I align with that. I agree with that. Hey, that's my value too. An example is, I love this one, a businesswoman working hard, CEO, or whatever the position is, but she's traveling on a airplane and she's sitting in first class and she has a moment to just relax for a second. And what happens, Em?
Well, so I imagine that this woman usually lives in a place of,
Energy, speed.
yeah, kind of hectic, a lot of pressure, some stress, a lot of responsibility. And yet here she is, she's on this plane, she has a second, takes off her shoes, pulls out the in-flight magazine and she opens up the cover and there's a 2-page ad about a resort on a tropical island somewhere. And this has the potential of awakening in this person that normally doesn't live in this place of relaxation, right? It calls to something in her. She wants to experience this story. She wants to play it out in her life. What would it be like to inhabit this explorer place, this story for a couple of weeks? And that is going to make her take action and to book that vacation because that brand awakened something. It called to the explorer within her to want to experience that.
Yes, all of us want to live out these different stories at the certain times of our lives. And for this woman here, for this example, she's been living out the ruler brand, that commanding and authoritative story. And so when she gets a moment, she realizes, I haven't been living my explorer, my
Mhm.
discovery uh, part of my life.
Yes, exactly.
All right.
Another good example would be the Dove Real Beauty ads that came out several years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Dove is a caregiver brand, and these Real Beauty ads weren't even selling Dove products. All they were doing is they were healing women. They were touching something tender in every woman's heart that had been damaged over the decades from looking at advertisements of unrealistic beauty. And Dove is redefining what real beauty actually is. And so every time you watch one of those ads, you feel this little nurturing happening in your soul because Dove is doing that. They're healing you, they're nurturing you, they're acting as a caregiver. You are creating an emotional tie to that brand. And by doing that, they're creating a loyal following. People align with that. They're like, I value this idea of what real beauty means. I stand with Dove.
Excellent. And now you're seeing why we spent that time looking at those four pillars of purpose, position, and promise. Find out who you are, who your people are, and then this archetypal structure of personality simplifies decision making about your tone of your voice, the design, the messaging, and each archetype can be communicated through images, colors, fonts, and messaging. Each one's different. Think
Mhm.
about the caregiver story. Think about the imagery, the colors, the words you would use to get across that story. But then what about the explorer? They would use different words. So would the outlaw.
Yeah. So in upcoming episodes, we're going to deep dive into each of these archetypes and we're going to tell you who they are, what they're about, what makes them tick. And then we're also going to talk about design and messaging wise. How do you get across that story?
Yeah, and what the audience is feeling, what the call would be like. I'm
Mhm.
feeling this, so therefore I'm going to look out to this
Right.
story.
How do I activate that story in my
Yes,
customers? Exactly. So it's really important to choose an archetype that is authentic to your company culture and your mission and your promise. This is what happens a lot of the times when I work with new brands. There's an archetype that appeals to them, like they want to be that archetype, but they really aren't. They would have to do a lot of cultural work within their company to inhabit, like to really own that archetype with integrity. So it's important to choose one that really represents you, that aligns with you. For example, a lot of companies want to be the hero. A lot of companies want to be the creator, but it takes a lot to be those brands.
yeah, do you remember the one we won't say names, but we just rebranded them and they wanted so bad to be a hero.
They did.
They wanted to come in and save the day and give you the service that you want, and we wrote the words and put it in the
Mhm,
brand brief and
mhm.
all, but really at the
But I
heart,
think they had a company culture of like a
yes,
caregiver,
they were a
right?
caregiver.
So it's really hard to come across as a hero if you at your heart are a caregiver. So it's going to send some weird messages to your
Yeah.
people.
You got these powerful like Nike or the Marines is kind of a hero story and Marines,
Yeah.
they're not the caregivers,
It
okay?
takes,
They are the
yeah, you have to
strong
be
finishers.
powerful. Right,
Yeah.
right. So this is something to think about, to choose wisely, not just to grab the one that like you like.
Mhm.
So it needs to be a good fit for you and your team. Your archetype will also help you make good decisions on how to create a brand experience that aligns with your customers' expectations. So your archetype is going to set up expectations in your customer of how they think your brand will sound, how it's going to look, what it's going to do, what it's going to believe in. The archetype comes with all kind of that pre-existing expectations with it. And so you'll need to think about all of those different touch points that a customer will have with your brand and how your brand would act in those situations. For example, I keep feeling like I'm using caregiver a lot today, but if you're a caregiver company, sending a handwritten thank you note with a package would be a really nice touch. And people would expect that from a caregiver and they would think, how lovely. However, if you are an outlaw brand and you send a heartfelt thank you note in a package, that is highly out of place and it's going to feel awkward.
Yeah.
So you would need to think about like, how would a caregiver act? How would a hero act? How would an outlaw
And
act?
you
How
could
would they
send them a gift.
talk?
You could send them a gift. It would just have to be a rebellious gift
Yeah.
somehow. I'm not gonna say what,
Some
but
kind of like,
yeah,
one of those stickers with the kid like peeing on something.
or a stick-on tattoo. This is something that's like we want to, yeah, rebel.
Candy cigarettes.
Love it, love it. And all right,
So, okay, so there's some questions that you would want to ask yourself as you're choosing an archetype.
yeah, yeah. What's your brand's mission and core values, which we talked about earlier?
Mhm.
So you want to ask those questions. What emotional response do you want to evoke?
So how do you want your customers to feel
Yeah,
when they're working with you? Okay.
and then who's your target audience and what do they resonate with? Those are some simple questions to ask as you're
Okay.
figuring this out.
Yes. So these are the questions that will guide you to your destiny, to your archetype. Okay, so let's talk about a real world example. Let's talk about Starbucks.
Okay.
This comes from a book I've mentioned on previous episodes. It's called The Hero and the Outlaw by Margaret Mark and Carol S. Pearson. And they write about the Starbucks brand as being the ideal explorer archetype brand. And this even goes into its logo development. So if you guys have looked at the Starbucks logo and wondered, who the heck is this weird lady? It comes from a Norse mythological sea creature. So even at its heart, it conjures images of people on ships
Exploring
exploring
the
out in the
sea. Yeah.
ocean and all of those crazy maps they would draw with all the weird sea creatures they would imagine lived in the,
Wait, is Moana an explorer story?
yes.
Okay. Yeah.
It is an
And
exploratory.
even the name Starbucks
Mhm.
from Moby Dick, the
Yes.
first mate,
Starbucks comes from Moby Dick,
right in the
also
book.
an
Yeah.
explorer story.
And
Okay. They designed all of their stores with lots of like wood and metal, just very reminiscent of a ship. Even the fact that you are purchasing a cup of coffee is explorer. Coffee in and of itself is an accessory, something helping you on your journey. So those of us who are living out this explorer story need things to help us on the way, right? We need that cup to nourish us, to wake us up, to get us to that next point that we're getting
and
to.
all the options available to us is
Yes.
kind of an exploration in like, what do I get?
Yes, exactly. Because explorers, and we'll talk about this in future episodes, but explorers are all about finding their individuality. Who am I? They want to exercise their own independence. And so all of those crazy choices that Starbucks offers you when you're trying to order a coffee gives that explorer heart the chance to create something truly customized and truly unique to you.
I love it. Love it.
What do they say on You've Got Mail? Like a completely defining sense of self. So when you get your archetype right and you start attracting customers, this is going to increase your customer loyalty. It's going to help you clarify your marketing. It's going to make your marketing so easy because know who you are. You know what your customers expect of you. You know exactly what to say to them and how to say it. And you know what colors to use and you know what images to use. You guys, this is it. This is the way to go.
It's
If I
so,
haven't sold it already.
I know, like there are 12 archetypes, which means as a brand, you could be headed in 12 different directions. Brands need the structure of an archetype, or else one day they're a jester, one day they're a hero, one day they're a sage, one day, whatever they're feeling that day. And that just costs you in time, money, customer loyalty, because you're different personalities to them at different times. This will align your direction so strong. And we're excited to go into the next episodes that go and break these down even further. Without further ado, here are the key takeaways from today. Brand personality sets the stage for your identity. Archetypes provide a framework to communicate who you are effectively and emotionally on a psychological level. And actionable steps for you listeners are: reflect on your own brand personality, explore archetypes as a tool for growth, and look for the archetype wheel on our social channels this week.
And listen to the next 4 episodes because we're going to deep dive into all of them.
Yeah, very powerful. All right. If you're finding our content helpful, please subscribe, leave us a review, or rate the podcast. This helps us reach more people trying to build their brands. Check out the link in the show notes to view the archetypal wheel. Next week, we'll start deeper dives on the archetypes. Join us as we tackle the innocent, explorer, and sage stories. Keep dreaming big, and until next time, I'm Brian Halley.
And I'm Emily Halley. Take care.